You have to start with who you are so that you can recognize what you want. And part of that is knowing how you show up in the world innately by our personality.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the KTS Success Factor podcast for women, where we talk about challenges senior female leaders face in being happy and successful at work. I'm your host, Dr. Sarah E. Brown. My guest today is Tricia Kagerer. She is on a mission to support and promote women into non-traditional roles in the workplace. And in that vein, she's written a book, The B Words, 13 Words Every Woman Must Navigate, where she highlights challenges and breakthrough strategies for women entering non-traditional roles in the workplace. She is currently the Executive Vice President of Risk Management for Jordan Foster Construction, a large construction organization that performs civil, multifamily, and general contracting across Texas. She leads the risk management, safety, and leadership teams. She is a construction industry expert and speaker on various leadership, risk management, and safety topics, including crisis management, emergency response best practices, education across cultures, and servant leadership and diversity. She holds a master's degree in dispute resolution from Southern Methodist University in Dallas, and her Bachelor of Science in Business Administration and Bachelor of Arts in Communication, Public Relations from Regis University in Denver, Colorado. Welcome, Tricia. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Tricia, what is the biggest challenge you help female leaders face in business today, and what might be the symptoms of those challenges?
So the biggest challenge that I help women face today is really recognizing the limiting beliefs. There's limiting beliefs that are internal and external. So I call them prohibition is external. So for example, in the construction industry, there are very few women. In fact, only 10% of the whole industry today is made up of women, and only 3.5% are working in the field. And so why is that? Well, a lot of it has to do with prohibition. So it's just always been considered an industry that's a male-dominated industry. It wasn't quote unquote women's work. And so society or culture kind of has defined that. The biggest example of prohibition was what happened in the 1920s when my grandmother immigrated from Ireland. Prohibition was you're not supposed to drink out, or you're not supposed to sell alcohol. The thing that's interesting, though, is prohibition is very much real and it does impact us. But what we celebrate is those that rise above it and move forward because of it, almost looking at prohibition as something that is a catalyst for change. That starts with inhibition. So how do we change the voice in our head and get clear on what we want so that we can have the courage to move forward? And that starts with, what are you telling yourself? So I have a very powerful negative voice in my head, and I actually named her Patricia. I go by Tricia. I named her Patsy. And I basically named her and claimed her so that it's, what is she telling me? What are the doubts? So that I can get clear of knowing, is it really true? And is there a semblance of maybe something that I've been telling myself that's holding me back from doing something isn't really true? And are there small steps that I can take to move forward? So I think it's a clear distinction between prohibition and inhibition. And that's critical to creating a life of self-defined success, which I talk about in the B words, a life on your own terms that doesn't look like anybody else's.
Very cool. And what are the biggest mistakes your clients make before working with you?
Well, I think in particular, in what I've seen in the industry that I've been, which is safety and risk management and construction, is we see women pursuing a career, pursuing their education, being very intentional about moving forward in that career. And then there's a limiting belief and it could be from prohibition in society, or it's also just inhibition internally that says, if you want to start a family, so at the time where we start becoming more successful and really earning that skill set and that knowledge and expertise, is the exact same time where potentially we want to start a family or find that significant other, and we want to move forward in that direction. And I see in many cases, there's a limiting belief that if I do one, I can't do the other. So in my case, I was climbing the corporate ladder, if you will, and I met my husband and got married and moved away to a foreign country. I ended up having 2 children. And at that time, I was told over and over by family, by friends, by colleagues that, oh, well, if you give up your career now, you're never going to get it back. And that's absolutely not true. And if I had believed that, I would have maybe not worked as hard as I did to make sure that I had a pathway of reentry. And so I went ahead and studied and got my certifications while I was home with my children when we were living in Munich, Germany. And then when I returned to the United States, it was relatively easy for me to find a position and negotiate. I actually was able to negotiate a flexible schedule way back when that just didn't exist. But I think that's really one of the biggest mistakes, is listening to all of the noise that's out there, that's prohibition, telling you can't do things. And if it's important to you to have a career and have a family, there are ways to do it, and the kids will be okay.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. What is the number one free and actionable tip you can give our listeners today to help them address this challenge now?
Well, so one of the things that I learned about in the last couple of years is I'm a certified Sherpa with Giant Worldwide. It's a leadership program that I studied in the 5 voices. So we have to know ourselves to lead ourselves. And there's a free assessment tool that anybody can take. It's called the 5 Voices Assessment. And you can just get online, take it. It's very similar to the Myers-Briggs, but it's much more streamlined to where it's only 5 voices instead of 16 different personality types. Mm-hmm. I believe you have to start with who you are so that you can recognize what you want. And part of that is knowing how you show up in the world innately by our personality. And so that's a free resource that's available to anyone. And then there's Giant TV as well.
Where would people find that?
It's 5voices.com. And then gianttv.com is also a resource where there's a lot of free videos for it's called the 100x Leader Program is one of the tools that they have. And then they also have a Sherpa training program as well. But once you've taken the 5 voice assessment, you can get online and learn everything there is to know about your personality type, how you show up, what are your triggers, how you are under stress. And all of that is a free resource that's available on the internet.
Terrific. So you gave us an actionable tip. Is that also the free valuable resource that you can recommend that women look at?
Yeah. Well, that's a free resource. And an actionable tip is just to really spend some time with a sheet of paper. And in my book, The B Words, in chapter 1, I talk about limiting beliefs. And there's an exercise that you can do. And it's basically changing that limiting belief into an empowering one. And it goes back to that pesky voice in your head, in my case, Patsy. So if you get a sheet of paper and you draw a line on it and you write down a limiting belief, and then you actually take the time to create an empowering belief. And then from there, you can create a strategy. So for example, women often, they'll say, I would love to start my own business one day. But then you ask, why don't you? Oh, I don't have enough money. The next question is, how much money do you need? And it's typically resulting back with a blank stare. I have no idea. So it could be that that's something that you're assuming you don't have enough money. But if you don't know how much money you need, you'll never be able to start a business, and you'll never be in action in forward to your dream. So a limiting belief, for example, if you don't understand finances or business, that could be something that a woman is telling herself. An empowering belief is, I have a great handle on finances and I have been successful in business. And then the strategy would be to sign up for an online class or attend a free seminar on personal finances. I mean, there's a million things out there right now. Even the small business administrations are very actively pursuing women, giving resources. But if you just stop with the idea and the limiting belief that you will never be able to start a business because you don't have enough money, you're never going to start a business.
Very good idea and advice. So what's one question, Tricia, that I should have asked you that will help our audience take action to address this challenge? And then would you answer the question?
Sure. So one question that you could ask me is inhibition, that limiting belief, that voice in your head, does it only impact women? And the reality is it impacts everyone. So I believe that right now, more than ever in our world, everything's very politically charged. There's a lot of barriers and a lot of finger pointing, and men and women feeling very uncomfortable with the whole situation. So bridges is what we need to create, where men and women are working together to encourage and empower everyone to be able to create their life based on their own self-defined success. That's really what it's all about. But part of that is inhibition is not just impacting women, it's impacting men as well. And if we don't tune into our inner voices, we will just assume that those things that are prohibition are always there and will never move forward. But if you look at the people that we celebrate in life and the heroes, they're the ones that stepped up and found a new way to do things, or pushed forward, or were able to go around a barrier or knock a barrier down. And I believe that that's just a better way to show up in the world, is to be in motion towards what you want to accomplish in your life, because we only get to be here one time.
Tricia, great advice. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me. Very nice to be a part of your show. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the KTS Success Factor podcast for women. If you like what you are hearing, please go to iTunes to subscribe, rate us, and leave a review. And if you would like more information on how we can help women in your organization to thrive, then go to www.sarahebrown.com. You can sign up for our newsletter, read show notes, and learn more about our podcast guests, read my blog, browse through the books, or contact us for a chat. Goodbye for now.